An astonishing find can leave us with more questions than answers. In this video, we will show you discoveries that are as incredible as they are enigmatic, and we will explain everything we know about them. Number 1. Mina Necropolis. Egypt's most famous ancient necropolis is Saqqara, which has yielded countless archaeological finds in recent years and will likely continue to do so for the next decade. However, it is far from the only notable ancient necropolis in the country. In February 2018, archaeologists discovered another in Mina, which is more than 240 kilometers south of Cairo. Although cemeteries have been found at Mina before, this one dating to the late Pharaonic period had somehow been overlooked until then, despite being much larger. Some of the tombs found in the necropolis belong to people known to Egyptologists, including the high priests of Thoth and their relatives. One of them is specifically named as Jehuti-Des, one of the 5 chief high priests of the deity, who is buried with no less than 40 members of his family and numerous figurines, examples of fine pottery and other funerary goods. So far, archaeologists have opened and fully explored 13 burial sites, with more to come in the future. Perhaps the Mina Necropolis will one day be as well known as Saqqara. Number 2. Medieval ruins in Finland. Students at a school in Turku, Finland, were shocked in early 2018 when renovation work inside their school gym uncovered long-forgotten medieval ruins. Many of Turku's medieval ruins were destroyed in 1827 when a huge fire swept through the city and burned more than 3/4 of the buildings. The school was built after the fire, but we now know that the work was carried out directly on the remains of at least 2 medieval houses and a section of a street. Archaeologists believe that if they continued digging and also lifted the schoolyard, they would find more of the street and probably several more houses. The school is not very enthusiastic about that idea and would like the archaeologists to give them back their gym. Local authorities have also recently tried to find a way to preserve the ancient ruins without causing damage to the school. One possible option is to finish excavating the ruins, put the gymnasium floor back on top, and open an underground museum at the same time. Number 3. Roman boxing gloves. Boxing has been around as a sport for almost as long as humans have walked the earth. It seems like there have always been athletes willing to fight each other for supremacy, and there have always been crowds willing to cheer them on as well. The first references we have to boxing as a sport date back to 3,000 years ago in ancient Egypt, but a recent discovery in Northumbria, England, has shown that the ancient Romans were also fans of this sweet science. Found at the Vindolanda Roman fort in the region, these 2 leather bundles are primitive boxing gloves and are around 1,000 years old. Although we know that the Romans liked boxing, these are the only 2 surviving gloves that have been found. It is thought that different units within the Roman army fought each other in boxing matches for bragging rights and supremacy. His friends were also known to enjoy betting on the outcome of combats. This particular pair was well worn and loved. Their owner thought enough of them to patch them up rather than throw them away, presumably only doing so when they were finally beyond repair. Number 4. Ancient Chariot Tomb. It seems to have been an unfortunate fact in ancient China that when leaders or warriors went to their final resting place, their horses accompanied them, whether they were dead or not. In November 2017, archaeologists discovered a mass burial site containing 4 ancient chariots and the remains of nearly 100 horses in the city of Xinjiang, Hunan Province. The chariots can be reliably dated to the spring and autumn period of China, about 2,700 years ago. One of the chariots is especially impressive, measuring 3 meters and elaborately decorated with bronze and bone. This is likely a family tomb that belonged to one of the noble families of the Shang state. Unfortunately, no inscriptions or written records were found inside the tomb. However, they found many impressive bronze artifacts that serve as further confirmation of the wealth of the tomb's owners. Curiously, they could find no human remains, despite being sure there must have been some in the tomb at some point. Since the horses almost certainly entered the tomb alive, it is macabrely possible that they ate the remains of their owners. Number 5. In 2013, it was decided that the Neptune shipyard in Newcastle upon Tyne, England, would be expanded. Before expansion work began, archaeologists were asked to examine the planned construction site. When they did, they found an 80-foot long stretch of wooden railway. This is not just any wooden railway, it is the oldest surviving wooden railway in the world. When these rails were built in the 17th century, trains had not yet been invented. Instead, the railroad carried wooden wagon-like vehicles, known as chalupas, which were pulled by horses along the tracks. This specific 24-meter stretch was part of the Wellington Wagonway, which was built in 1785. It is so rustic that some of its sleepers are little more than tree branches cut and wedged into the track. The find is of international importance because the Wellington Wagonway was the first to be built with the international gauge, which was copied from wagon rails to steam locomotives and later became the world standard thanks to the expansion of the empire. British. The discovery was in danger from the moment it was made, because the wood was suddenly exposed to the elements, but it has since been preserved. Number 6. Emojis could one day become the most used form of language in the world, but if you think they are a modern invention, we have a surprise for you. The smiley face is the most widely used and recognizable emoji of all, and it is easy to recognize carved into the side of this 3,700-year-old jug, which was found in Karkamış, Turkey, in July 2017. The mark was made deliberately, and the style is almost identical to the type of smiley face people draw today. We think this officially qualifies as the world's oldest smiley face. The jug was used to drink beer, so it is very likely that whoever owned it associated the object with good times and fun. The smiling face, therefore, would be in keeping with its use at the time the jug was made. The area where it was found would be controlled by the Hittites, so it can never be said that the Hittites did not have a sense of humor. The digital emojis we use today were created during the 1980s, but did not become popular until the late 1990s, when the world moved digital. Number 7. The mysterious Hittite gold bracelet. We start with a beautiful gold bracelet that was accidentally discovered by a farmer while plowing his field in the Turkish village of Clay in March 2022. The bracelet is around 3,300 years old and is the first artifact of its kind to be discovered with figurative representations on its surface. Additionally, it is the first Hittite bracelet to be found with an elliptical bezel, a shape that was important to the Hittites but had only previously been seen on their ring seals. We are fortunate that the bracelet survived its encounter with farm equipment that left it dented and damaged. It has already undergone some preservation and repair work and will undergo some more before being displayed at the Archaeological Museum. Sufficient repair work has been done to determine that the figure in the center of the relief is the goddess Ishtar, although the precise meaning of the scene is unknown. Archaeologists conducted extensive excavation of the field where the bracelet was found, but no other artifacts were discovered. Therefore, the presence of the bracelet on the field remains unexplained. Number 8. The fragile 1,300-year-old ship in France. Scientists have been racing against time to rescue our next discovery ever since they found it. This is a 1,300-year-old ship found in France, of an exceptionally rare design. The vessel could be of enormous importance to historians and researchers, but it may not last long enough in its current state for them to examine it. The wrecked ship's oak, chestnut, and pine beams are so delicate that they must be sprayed with water every 30 minutes to ensure they do not disintegrate. The 40-meter-long boat was found on the banks of the Garonne River in southwestern France in early 2022, but the construction materials from which it is made had not been touched by air or light since the day it was made. Sank. making them extremely vulnerable. Radiocarbon dating indicates that the ship sank between 687 and 720 AD and is remarkably advanced based on what we know about French naval architecture of the Middle Ages. She could have been the first ship of her type or an experimental vessel that was considered a failure after the shipwreck. Unless we can stabilize the wreck enough to properly examine it, we may never know. Number 9. The origin of the Black Death. We know that the Black Death was the deadliest plague to ever hit the face of the earth. We also know that the plague peaked between 1346 and 1352. What we've never known is where the plague started, but that might have changed recently. After examining thousands of medieval tombstones, researchers believe they may have traced the origins of the Black Death to a specific, unlikely location. If they are right, it began near Lake Issyk in what is now Kyrgyzstan. A disproportionately high number of burials took place in the nearby Barana and Karachigak cemeteries between 1338 and 1339, with the cause of death listed as pestilence. Scientists opened the graves of 3 of the individuals and identified plague bacteria in all of them. From there, the plague probably reached Western Europe on merchant ships and then killed about 50% of Europe's total population. Although rats were once thought to be responsible for the transmission of the Black Death, it is now thought more likely that it was transmitted by infected fleas. Number 10. There are many examples of Neolithic art in Scotland, but none pose as much of a mystery as those known as Towy Stones or Towy balls. They are sometimes more simply called carved stone balls, a title that is not very imaginative. These balls are not especially rare, but finding multiple examples of them doesn't get us any closer to understanding why they were made or what they were used for. The first specimen appeared in the 19th century, but more continued to be found until 2013. They are small enough to fit in the palm of the hand, measuring on average between 5 and 12 centimeters in diameter, and can be made of any common rock, from granite to sandstone. Instead of being spherical, they are deliberately covered in raised areas and decorated with intricate patterns of lines and circles. Similar patterns have also been found on artifacts belonging to the Picts, who lived in Scotland 2,800 years ago, but the stones are much older. Some are believed to be more than 5,000 years old. Theories about their use vary, from their possible use as weapons to a type of resume that bricklayers carried with them to demonstrate their skills when seeking paid employment. Number 11. You may have seen this following artifact in the news relatively recently. In 2018, it was stolen from a museum in France, causing minor national alarm until it was found and recovered a week later. This is an item worth worrying about because it is truly one of a kind. It is a human heart contained within a solid gold container topped with a crown. This is the golden reliquary of the Heart of Anne of Brittany, which has been safely returned to the Nantes Museum, and was a hugely significant figure in French history. She is the only woman to marry 2 French kings and also managed to marry a Holy Roman Emperor before she died in 1514. Her death was considered such a national tragedy that the official mourning period lasted more than a year. Month. In her will, she specified that upon her death, her heart was to be removed and placed inside a solid gold container before being sent to the city of Nantes and placed inside her parents' tomb. Most of her wishes were fulfilled, so her heart is inside the golden box. It may not be in her parents' grave, but at least the Nantes Museum is in the same city. Number 12. Fruitcake is famous for staying edible long after it's made, but even taking that into account, we'd have strong reservations about eating this particular fruitcake. It is more than a century old and was found in a hut at Cape Adare, Antarctica, in 2017. The hut itself is Borchgrevink hut, built by Norwegian explorer Karsten Borchgrevink in 1899 and later used by other explorers. It is the oldest man-made structure in Antarctica. Borchgrevink did not make or carry this cake, It is believed to date from Captain Robert Falcon Scott's ill-fated Terra Nova expedition between 1910 and 1913. A company called Huntley and Palmers is known to have provided supplies to the Terra Nova expedition, so the fruitcake is probably their work. Scott never reached Cape Adare, so the cake must have belonged to the group led by First Officer Victor Campbell, who took refuge there during the winter of 1911. Experts say the cake is in excellent condition and is still edible. We take them at their word. Due to their high energy, fruitcakes remain a popular choice for explorers visiting Antarctica. Number 13. While we're talking about food, let's see what can be discovered by examining the contents of a Bronze Age lunchbox. This particular box was found when it was revealed by melting glacial ice at the Lodberg Pass in 2012, 2,400 meters above sea level in the Bernese Alps. The circular box is made of 3 different types of wood. The base is pine, the sides are willow, and the seams are larch. As the box is made of wood, it was possible for scientists to perform radiocarbon tests, thus confirming that it is at least 4,000 years old. Amazingly, the same ice that preserved the wood also partially preserved traces of what used to be inside the box. Scientists have found tar or slag adhering to interior wood surfaces, indicating that it was used to store or transport whole grains. Their presence at this specific location raises questions for historians. Was there a trade route connecting these Bernese highlands to the valley? Or was it simply a case of a hiker packing a lunchbox before setting out on a long journey? Number 14. Ancient swamp body. It is an unfortunate fact of life that humans sometimes find themselves trapped in peat bogs, unable to free themselves, and lose their lives there. When a so-called bog body was found in Denmark in April 1952, it was initially believed to belong to a peat cutter named Red Christian, who disappeared from the area in 1887. Radiocarbon dating of the corpse told a very different story. This body was not from the recent past, it was positively ancient. Now known as the Grobel Man, due to the bog's proximity to the town of Grobel, this well-preserved body belongs to someone who died more than 2,300 years ago, during the Iron Age. What confuses experts about the body is that his hands show no signs of the roughness that would come with manual labor, which would be expected of a civilian of this era. He was around 30 years old, stood 1 meter 52 centimeters tall, and based on the contents of his stomach, he might have been a vegetarian. We think of veganism and vegetarianism as trends of the modern era, but perhaps they are much older than we think. Number 15. Olmec monuments in Tinos, Mexico. Now we have a notable find that occurred in Tinos, Mexico, in August 2022. There, archaeologists discovered a set of massive monuments from the Olmec culture that include a pair of reliefs carved from limestone. These reliefs depict Olmec rulers in a ritual contortionist pose that was said to reduce oxygen levels in the brain and induce a trance-like state. The Almex believed that this process was divine. These depictions are extremely rare, which is why archaeologists in the country are excited. Each of the reliefs is large, with a diameter of approximately 5 feet, and they also depict large faces wearing diadems and mirrors with Olmec crosses in their centers. It is difficult to determine the exact age of these ancient works of art, but this part of Tinos, near the Usumacinta River, was an important population center of the Almex during the formative period, about 2,900 years ago. Experts in ancient South American art suggest that the style of the reliefs may have been influenced by the early Mayans, although this claim is controversial and there is not yet enough evidence to support it. Eventually, the Mayans became predominant in this part of the country approximately 2,000 years ago.